This podcast and any written materials related to it represent the opinions of Lisa Kays and Paula D. Atkinson and our guests to the show and any written materials. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. It is for informational and educational purposes only, and because each person is so unique, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. In no way does listening, reading, emailing, or interacting on social media with our content establish a doctor-patient relationship.
Hi, I am Paula D. Atkinson.
And I am Lisa Kays.
And this is What If Nothing's Wrong with You? Welcome. We're on episode 6. This is going to be a fun one. JK. We'll get into some topics of self-disclosure, death, what happens when shit goes down in your therapist's life. Because it turns out your therapist is just a person.
Yeah. And shit, we are not immune to, we're not immortal, nor is anyone that we know.
Exactly. Right.
So doctors are immortal.
Right. Exactly. Nothing bad ever happens to a doctor. So we're going to talk about that and what to look out for if your therapist is self-disclosing a lot, meaning they're telling you a lot of shit about themselves and their life, and that feels bad in your body. You might want to listen to that, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. The most important thing that has happened to anyone ever is that Cowboy Carter came out. I know this episode's going to come out in a few months, but we'll still be talking about this album, won't we, Nemeka?
Yes, we will.
I'm hoping to have listened to it by then.
Yes. Lisa, can you listen to the Beyonce album? Beyonce Knowles Carter put out her country album, Act 2 of, I think, we're going to get 3 acts.
Yeah. And do you know what the third act is going to be? Or have you heard the rumors?
That it's going to be rock.
Yes, all rock.
Amazing.
Yep.
What was the first act? Was it also country?
Renaissance?
It was Renaissance. So that was
the
dance album.
Right. The dance pop house disco.
Yeah.
So brilliant, which I've listened to constantly for a year now. And then she put this out. The thing I need to say I have a lot of things to say, but the thing I need to say that I thought was so fascinating is the last time I felt this way about an album where I could feel in my body that the goddess, magician, empress that is Beyonce was metabolizing something for us in real time, and we were getting to listen to it through her art. The last time I felt like that was the Solange album. With Cranes in the Sky. Do you remember that album?
Oh, no.
So when that album came out, I was like, Solange, like, I don't know what is happening in Tina's womb, in her uterus. But she is creating these magical goddesses that are capable of taking pain, metabolizing it, and creating art where I can actually feel it happening in my body too. It's magic.
It's that Creole Southern blood that they have, and
they're magicians.
Yeah, they're magicians. Exactly that.
Because I couldn't stop, and now I can't remember the name of that album, but the Solange album that has Cranes in the Sky, that album I listened to 1,000,000 times.
Okay, I need to listen to that album. Oh, wow.
It's like, it's the same thing with Renaissance. It's the same thing with Lemonade. You can like crawl inside the album and like live there for a while.
For a minute. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So she's not one of us. I saw her I saw the Renaissance concert right before I moved in August. And she's not
otherworldly.
She's not a person.
The thing is those, like with Beyonce, I feel like she's a fellow Virgo.
Yes,
so I know that a lot of the stuff she does is premeditated and calculated.
Oh yeah.
But then she takes it to another level, Absolutely. At times, which is for a human being to like be able to curate like this album that she did, Cowboy Carter, it's a journey.
It
It
is.
takes you on a journey.
It is. It's an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not just
amazing.
a good. Yeah. How many songs are there? 24 songs, something like that?
27 in total.
She did it in a year? She did
No.
that in it.
No, she's been working
Oh no,
on
she started it at the
after
the thing.
the
'Cause-
CMAs. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So the story, if you don't know, I'm sure you know at this point, she performed with the Chicks in 2016. Alan Jackson literally got up and walked out. Like the
Wow.
amount of racism, it's like how when Arizona was like, we're not going to celebrate MLK Day. Like, how racist do you have to be to not take a day off? How racist do you have to be to get up in an auditorium while Beyonce is performing and leave the room? That is like deep-seated racism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
The Miley Cyrus Beyonce song, Two Most Wanted, it's in my head constantly. I can't stop
Yeah.
thinking about it. It's so beautiful. I had no idea that their voices together would sound like heaven like that.
It's like the perfect contrast to Beyonce's, stable, beautiful voice that she has to Miley's gritty, raw, like,
Totally.
and it just works so well. And like I said, Beyonce is so like, she thinks of things like 5 steps ahead. There's no way how she purposely recorded this song so that it can be played on radio.
Yes.
And so people can like really, really
find their way to her.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Because you know that if it's recorded with Miley, then it's going to be played on top 40. It's going to be played on country. It's going to be played, right?
Everywhere.
Yes.
Everywhere.
Such a Virgo. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the album's already, it's supposed to be #1 for next week here in the States and also the UK. And this was the first time, this is the second time it's happened. Her debut album, the same thing happened.
Right.
She had the top, I think also the top single.
Mm-hmm. Of all the charts.
On all the charts.
Yes.
Everything.
Yeah. Even Carlo was like, I can't wait for her to sweep the CMAs. How fun will that be?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so good.
And she better win a Grammy. Well, we'll see. But she's never won a Grammy. She's never won that for album of the year. She's never won
record of the year. Record of the year, album of the year.
I think it's album of the year.
I think it's album of the year.
Album of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Taylor Swift is about to release her album, and those they always pick Taylor, don't they? So this is gonna be
Yep. It's gonna be Beyonce.
And I bet even Taylor wants Beyonce to win this. I mean, honestly, I bet Taylor's like, please.
Oh my God, when Adele won it, she literally broke her Grammy in half and gave half of it to Beyonce. She was like, what am I doing up here?
Yeah.
When even the white artists who win are on stage being like, why is Beyonce down there?
Doesn't make any sense.
It's not working.
I cede my time.
Exactly, right? Absolutely.
One more thing about Beyonce on this album in particular, why I think it's one of my favorite albums of hers, is that she uses her voice.
Oh God.
In so many ways.
She sings opera.
Whether she's singing opera, she's rapping, even her tone, how she changes. She sounds like Tina Turner on Yaya. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
I can't wait for this.
Swooning.
I am swooning.
Listening and you can't see. There's an actual swoon.
Yeah.
It's true. I have to tell you, the first time I listened to it, my colleagues, shout out to my sweet colleagues that are in our queer peer supervision group that Lisa's part of, they were here. We got to listen to Cowboy Carter on the Friday it was released while driving through Joshua Tree.
Oh, wow.
Right? It was like...
That's an experience. Jeez.
It truly was. I'm like, I'm so happy right now. Like the planets aligned, the birds could fly. It was amazing. Yeah.
Right.
I want to hear what you were saying before we started recording to make about it being a Southern album.
Right.
That's country, but like say more.
Right. It's a country album, and people are sort of, I don't want to say taking offense, like on the socials.
Sure.
No, there is discourse going on. Is it a country album or is it not? And to me, Beyonce is sort of like creating her own lane. Like this is Southern music, which is country music,
Which
you
is
know,
Black music.
which is Black music. And that's where it all
Yes,
started anyway.
course.
So what is everyone talking about? Why is everyone so pissed?
Right.
Anyone can record a country album, you
And
know, especially
yes,
when you are from the South, because that's
exactly.
all you know.
Exactly.
Literally, why she did all those covers and included Dolly, included
Yes.
Willie
Willie
Nelson,
Nelson.
is
Yeah.
because these are all people who have been in, you know, country music for years, and this is the music that she has listened to. It's not like
Exactly.
she has not listened to country music. She has.
She,
It's her upbringing.
yes. And one of her first performances was at a rodeo. First of all, I didn't
Mhm.
know Willie Nelson was 90 fucking years old.
Jeez,
Get it.
Louise.
Get it, Willie.
Still,
I
still,
also
still
did.
smoking.
Still smoking. I didn't know he had a daughter named Paula, which I love.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I love that he's on it. The thing about Jolene, so she redoes Jolene and she updates it, which I think is hysterical. There's a lot of white people taking offense.
Mhm.
Anybody, if you are a Caucasian person and you take offense, don't. No,
You
no,
do
no.
not have that feeling. There's nothing wrong with you, and that is wrong.
And no,
Yeah.
you are having a wrong feeling. Dolly herself gives permission. And it's
loved it.
and
Dolly
loved it. Right. So if Dolly loves it, like it's you can have that feeling, but it's like a lot of things as a white person, like don't tell anyone.
Yeah.
Don't talk about it.
Don't, yeah.
Don't tell anyone.
Don't
you feel that way.
disclose. We're going to talk about self-disclosure.
Exactly right.
Don't disclose that feeling.
Yeah.
No,
That's one of our secret feelings.
it's a secret feeling. I just don't think I have someone that I love very much who was like, oh, I don't like that she did that to Jolene, who is a white person. And I was like, no, you don't get to think that. You
Yeah.
don't get to feel that. You don't get to say that. No.
Well, no one owns the idea of a woman being jealous about another
Right.
woman. That is not, and I mean, Dolly Parton packaged it a certain way.
Oh, no,
But
beautiful.
no
way.
one, I still haven't heard the song, by the way. My son will not let me. But no one owns that concept. And
Yeah.
Dolly was like, sure, take the name, take the, do whatever. She clearly
She's selling
gave
the
her full
album.
permission.
Right.
Yeah.
No one owns that idea. Beyonce's
Right.
allowed to have a take on that
Right.
idea.
Mhm.
Like,
And when Dolly does
when
the
Dolly did
callback-
it, there was
Oh.
Right.
history about Dolly doing it. There's a whole,
Exactly.
we're not going to go back into that, but it's I can't wait to hear that someday
Yeah.
when my son will allow it.
And the fact that Dolly literally is on the album.
Yes, and does the callback to Becky with the good hair. It's
Right.
ugh,
It's, come on.
iconic.
Yeah.
So good. We don't deserve Beyonce
Mhm.
ever.
I clearly don't, because I'm not allowed to listen to the
Because you're not allowed to listen to
album.
I have this visual of Lisa like in her closet, like on her Spotify, like let me just listen to it real quiet.
And my son's going, Alexa, Cruel Summer by Taylor Swift.
Again and again and again.
Wow.
We also just have to acknowledge that the trailer for the Joker, Lady Gaga, River Phoenix,
Part
River Phoenix.
2.
Says the Gen Xer River Phoenix. It's
Joaquin
been dead
Phoenix.
since 1985. Yeah, Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah.
Oh my God, the trailer is amazing. And it's going to be a jukebox musical.
Yes. It looks like it. It's going to be so theatrical.
Dark.
The dark. If anyone has watched the first movie, right? And
I
then you're watching this one, to me, it's going to be such a juxtaposition. Like,
Yeah.
it's going to be out there. And the fact that you have Lady Gaga.
It's my other queen.
Come on.
It's going to
Come
be
on.
amazing.
It's going to be amazing. It's going to be
can't-
so great.
I can't wait.
Right.
October 4th.
I
October
love
4th.
listening to people who don't have children. I'm like, is the first one Batman? What is going on? It's so
Yeah.
cute. I'm like,
Even
oh,
Carla was like, "Oh my God, I would love for this Joker to meet Robert Pattinson's
Since
Batman."
Batman,
Yeah,
right. It's so convoluted and messy,
Yeah.
but geez Louise.
I don't know
Um,
anything about Batman except
Yeah.
now that Lady Gaga's involved, I'm all in. I'm all in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about. We're going to talk about self-disclosure. We're going to talk a little bit about grief. We're going to talk about what if nothing's wrong with you? And also, what if nothing's wrong with your therapist? And he, she, they have lives and have pain and have suffering. And so we're going to talk about, because it's kind of a weird thing that nobody talks about. And I think clients, people who see therapists, don't know what what we as therapists are trained to do, what we're trained not to do. There's so much out there. So what do you want to say, Lisa?
Well, maybe we should start with like the reason we're talking about this is you and I both lost a parent, me more recently, while we were working. And we
Correct.
made the decision to keep working. And then to do like our job is weird. We don't just do spreadsheets and you send a note to your boss. It's like I'm having we have people that are going to ask us questions. Some of them want to know stuff. Some of them don't want to know stuff. So we want to kind of talk about like what happens when you have to learn that your therapist is a human. To what extent do we tell people? Why do we tell them? When do we tell them? When do we decide, you know what, maybe I shouldn't be working right now? When do we decide, like, you know what, I'm going to keep working. It's okay. Like, how does that affect the therapy? And maybe we should start with like some background, kind of just like the rules or how we are trained to think about this and decide.
Right. So dead white guy therapy is what I call it, right? And that's the kind of therapy where the white man is a blank slate and you just go and you talk at the blank slate. This is such a gross generalization, but yes, right? And so I was thinking about this in terms of how we're trained. I just found an article from NIH that talks about TSD, because we have to put a label and simplify everything. So
we should have LP. What would it be? Loss of parent while therapisting. LPWT.
Yeah, right. Lots of pet. I just told you that when my mom died, I was like, oh yeah, I can keep working. When Jesus, my 16-year-old Chihuahua, died, I'm like, I can never work again. I need to take 7 months
and there
off.
is nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, exactly. So TSD, the revealing of a therapist's feelings, thoughts, personal information to a client, is an inevitable aspect of therapeutic relationships. However, despite its prevalence in clinical settings, we, NIH, believe there is insufficient recognition, exploration, and research of TSD in our work. Amen.
I was just going to add to that because it's kind of, I forgot about this when we were, but I used to give social media ethics presentations. And about, when Facebook was like just getting invented and it was like, what are the therapists to do? None of them should be online. They should just go hide in a hole forever. I mean, that's what I was taught. Right. It's like, that seems like it's not going to work for me.
Yeah.
And when I researched those presentations, the little research that was done, and this was a while ago, I haven't updated it in a long time, was split 50-50. They surveyed people and they said, what about this was about finding stuff online without asking, but still, about 50% said the information I found online actually helped me feel closer to my therapist. It helped normalize experiences I had had. And 50% were like, it ruined me. It ruined the therapy. It was hard. I didn't want to know it, blah, blah, blah. And the whole point of it is there's no one right way for everybody.
Right.
Like that was the whole takeaway is there is no rule that's going to get us through this and work for everyone about everything.
Right. And when I supervise people, and you can ask some of my supervisees if this is true, but I think it's true. What I continually say to them is you got into this job for a reason, right? Because you probably were raised in a family with a narcissist. So you were constantly picking up vibes. 99%.
And you're really good. You're really good at delivering information in like hard information in such a careful way that people can hear it.
You might be super hyper vigilant about picking up on the vibrations of anyone, anytime, every waking hour of every day. That might be why you're a therapist. Yeah. So to at least make money off of that, and then I can always feel which one of my clients can handle me being a person with thoughts, feelings, and ideas, and which one of my clients who probably had parents who violated them energetically constantly, who cannot handle me being a person. Those clients are not listening to my podcast right now.
They don't even know it exists.
They don't even, I would never in a million years tell them, because they could never handle me being a fully rounded person. And that's okay. That's part of the job. And then I have lots of clients that are like, oh my God, I can't believe you have a podcast. That's so great. Yeah.
And it
Great.
also depends on how long we've seen the person.
Yes.
You know, if I just started with you last week, you do not know my father just died. Like,
No.
that would be weird. I mean, unless you directly asked, which no one did.
Right.
And, or, you know, but if I've known you for 10 years.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, because the logistic, it's like I have to explain why I'm somewhere else, why I have to reschedule things. Why,
Yeah.
you know, there are things that like we can't, and there are some people ask, some people
Yeah.
don't. That's a
Right.
clue. I was telling you, I invented, since we like acronyms, consent-based self-disclosure,
Love.
CBSD,
Yes.
where if I wasn't sure, and in my groups I did this, I asked, do you want to know?
Right.
Why do you want to know? Why
Right.
would you not want to know? And we all had a conversation about it that turned out to be super, I think, healing and helpful for a
Yeah.
lot of those folks. So it's complicated.
It's complicated. It's good to remember that the rules around anything that's part of the medical, psychological, industrial complex were invented by and for white men. So we were talking about this too, right? That for white men, they probably can be a blank slate constantly. But a woman comes in and she has a wedding ring, or she's pregnant, or has to take care of, it's usually the woman that has to take care of elderly parents. It's usually the woman who has to go pick up their son when they're allergic to peanuts or whatever the fuck. It's usually the woman that has to do it. So it's far harder for a woman to be a complete blank slate.
Oh, that's a great point. I had not thought about that.
Yeah, of
You're
course.
so right.
Of course.
So obvious.
It's right. Men
and-
can, sure, because they have people who are taking care of them constantly.
I was also thinking about, so I think a lot of these rules were designed, and I wonder if there's some correlation between male therapists who invented therapy and enmeshed, overly like boundaryless mothers.
Yes.
Because these rules seem to me to cater to that particular dynamic where it's like,
Right.
too much information is going to hurt you. Disclosing information is going to hurt me. I don't want to talk about it. I'm walled off, kind of, you know, because a walled off response is a response to enmeshed boundarylessness.
Right.
Whereas we forget the other side, which I have a number of patients, and even in my own experiences, especially with like death and, you know, or aging parents who are equally traumatized by a lack of information.
Yes.
My parents never tell me when they went in the hospital. My
Right.
parents don't tell me when there's a family crisis.
Right.
My parents didn't tell me my dog was going to die. My parent, you know, and they're equally traumatized by the secrecy or the, I need to protect you from this.
Right.
And so a lot of the work that I ended up doing, you know, was with people saying like, I feel way more disorganized not knowing. It feels like
Yes.
this elephant in the room. It feels like a secret.
Yeah.
You know, and talk, because I think some of this therapy, I sometimes feel like it was designed for like one relational dynamic.
Yes.
And it does not take into account the diversity. And that's challenging when you have a group and everybody's got a different thing going on. But I found that in many cases, people were like super relieved. And
Yeah,
they got to work on a lot of their own stuff by
because you
kind
showed
of
up.
knowing, they worked, or
Yeah.
they worked on their parent, you know, but just being like, I'm going to be the parent that is not going to flood you. I'm not going to be like,
Exactly.
this is everything I went through and I'm having a horrible time and please take care of me.
Right.
That was a dynamic we talked about actually a lot in my groups. But the parent who can say, yeah, something bad happened and I'm struggling with it and I'm dealing with it. And you're not crazy for thinking that, like,
Right.
for noticing that, you know, and I'm okay. We can talk about
I'm
it.
taking care
and,
of
like,
myself.
yeah, that you can. And, I mean, I had dialogues with patients where they were like, this is kind of helpful to be
Yeah.
like, you're just naming it. But I wasn't allowing my patients to become the parentified child taking care of
Taking
me. I was
care of it.
holding the line. That's great modeling. I mean, I have to say,
It
you
is
know,
great
for somebody,
modeling.
I thought that was brilliant. Good
Right.
job.
Well, and also I know when my mom was dying, it was so quick and she got sick so fast. And it was interesting how this was before the pandemic. So nobody was doing sessions online yet. But there were a few of my clients who I knew were in tough spots. And I asked them, do you want, we can do a phone session. And a lot of them said no. They were like, no, I don't know what you're dealing with, in California. It's when I lived in DC full time, obviously. But like, no, I don't want to take that time from you. Right. And then to your point that this is everybody's relational trauma is different. For some, it's that they didn't get enough. For some, it's that they got too much and it was all dumped on them. So for us to, to use woo-woo language, right? For us to stay in our aura bubbles and to say, yes, this happened because this happens, because everything that exists will or has lost a parent. That's how nature works, right? But I am taking care of right. A lot of my clients were like, I hope you're taking care of yourself. And for me to say, I am, thank you. Right. And it's like that loving distance of like, I will take care of me and this is not your problem. Right.
Mhm.
And then
I
again,
think that is so healing.
exactly. Yeah.
And
a corrective emotional experience.
Yeah. Of being like, we can
Mhm.
be in this. And the other thing that I think you and I both believe is that it's okay. I was surprised by the assumption on so many of my patients' part of like, oh, I'm a burden. I don't want to tell you anything that's going
Yeah.
on because I am a burden.
Right.
And we should all be taking care of you and you should just tell us about your father.
The all
It's
or
like,
nothing of it.
not gonna happen.
Yeah.
But a lot of what happened, and I didn't say this, I don't think that was appropriate, but a lot of what I ended up hearing was actually very healing for me. So you and I
Yeah.
have a belief that like it's okay for the healer to be healed. And a lot of what I experienced in my work over the last couple days has been like super healing. And it was just people talking about their own stuff. And I was like, oh, that's validating. Okay, yeah.
Yes, of course.
And that they weren't doing it to help me. They were doing their own stuff. And I was like, oh, that's kind of helpful. Cool. It's like it's not
Give
there's
a
not
healing,
an
get a
it doesn't
healing.
need to be an assumption that you're taking something. If it was too draining, I wouldn't work that day.
Exactly.
And so there's also this like people having trouble trusting. We're not going to overextend. We're not
Right.
like working through while we want to be like crying our eyes out. That we have judicious, too, of being like, can I work today? Am I okay? I have sort of a way I check in and make sure. And
Me too.
you
Yeah,
probably
of
do
course.
too. And,
Yes.
we also sometimes do it for each other. Kind
Yes.
of being like, maybe like I had somebody say to me, this wasn't for this, but long time ago, be like, maybe today you're going to take off. And it was something I thought was kind of minor. And I was like, you know what? I think maybe you're right. I will
Yeah.
take and I canceled people and took a nap. But like that it's this assumption of like it's draining and we're forcing ourselves is
No.
not necessarily, it could be right, but it's not
No.
always.
Yeah. I wanted to make sure that we sort of talk about that, at the beginning of therapy, it was the blank slate, but later, as you discussed, right, it's been more and more like therapists are allowed to self-disclose only when it helps the client. That is great if we had some way of knowing that what I'm about to say is going to help the client. So I love what you said about like consent-based self-disclosure. I often do that. Do you want to hear about, or I stole from one of my psychic friends. I have some matching pictures. Do you want to hear about that? Would it be helpful to hear about that? Right. And then going from there. So still they are in the driver's seat. In today's day, it's not that we are supposed to be blank slates and Lisa and I are burning it all down and just going forth and sharing all of our shit with
These are
everybody.
not innovative ideas.
No. I think as more and more women have become therapists, it has evolved. As more and more people of color have become therapists, as more and more queer people have become therapists, it is evolving that maybe this whole blank slate thing it's not what's the most healing for everybody.
Well, and I think too, like allowing ourselves to expand, because even that idea of like, I only disclose if it's going to help you. I used to have a very narrow view of like, I would only disclose if my father is dying, if your father is dying on the same week at the same time, and like, then it's going to help
Very
you.
specific.
But that we expanded out to be like, if I have somebody who's been gaslit their whole lives and then says, I feel like something is off with you. Are you okay? For me to be like, oh, I'm fine. Nothing's going on. Everything.
Why would you ask
that's
that? That's what
going
that's what therapists usually do. Why would you ask that?
Yeah, why would you ask that? Everything's fine. I didn't just spend a week in the hospital watching my father die. Like
Right?
that we can expand it out to a lot of different levels of like not
Yeah.
just the information being
Yes.
helpful, the content, but the process, like some people might be hurt. Like I've known you 10 years and you won't tell me. Like, also
Yeah.
I knew you were pregnant and you had a baby, but I can't like it's weird depending
is weird.
on the context. And so letting ourselves expand that out and think about
Yes.
it more broadly than just,
Yes.
do we have to have a total match on this
Of
day of what I
right.
tell you?
And also and we've talked about this so many times in under the umbrella again of what if nothing's wrong with you. If I do fuck up and I do tell you something, like this one time I had a client recently who I said, my father's also going through some shit, right? Blah blah blah. And she was good, and hopefully it is the relationship that I have modeled and that we have the connection so she can say, "Ooh, I thought about it. That didn't feel good when you shared that." Great. That's such good information for me. Thank you so much for telling me that. You don't have to hear anything else about my narcissistic.
And actually, let's talk about when self-disclosure, because I have experienced yucky self-disclosure from I've experienced from supervisor, therapists, I'm sure, and recently at the VA hospital I experienced a lot of it. I was like, wow, you're not using any lens whatsoever. So we could maybe give some examples of like, when it is like, ew, you weren't using any kind of lens to decide
Well, and
what
also
you were doing it.
let's I would love to validate all of our listeners that when it feels bad in your body, listen to that. So if your therapist or anybody who is being paid to help you in any way is sharing something about themselves with you and it feels bad in your body, that is real. That was just an energetic violation. That it may not have been that they meant it may not have been an intentional energetic violation, but it was one. And you might want to, I would love for you to trust that.
And that it might not mean, oh, I have to break up with this person, like in the
Sure.
case of what happened. But if like the red flag would be if somebody said, hey, Paula, I didn't love that. It didn't feel great. And Paula was like, oh, really? What's that about for you? What's going on
Yes.
with you that you can't tolerate that
Yuck.
is going to be a red
That's a
flag.
red
We're
flag.
gonna pay because we misstep. I probably misstepped about 12 times last week. We don't know. I mean,
Sure.
that either by disclosing or not disclose, who knows? I'll find out.
Yep.
But that it's the way it's handled.
Absolutely.
And it's also okay if you're like, whoa, your dad is dying. You know what? That is not on my list of things I want to even, because it's funny to me too, this
Yes.
idea that like everything is unconscious. Therapists are making all these unconscious connections, but this, so that somebody might not intuit or be like, you know what? My unconscious doesn't want to do a therapist whose mother or dad is dying right now. And that is a perfectly okay thing to be like, just intuitively, like those people that told you like, no, I don't want to have a call right now.
Yes,
Cool.
great.
That's okay. If you're doing it to take care of me, that's something you might want to talk to me about.
Yeah, I
But
would love for you
if
to talk to me
you're
about.
doing it out of a like, I don't think I want to vibe with that right now. Cool.
I'm not, or
that's fine.
absolutely. We are providers. And if we are not providing what you need provided, then I had that you just remember, it made me remember I had a client once who their previous, is a queer woman, didn't want to ever have kids, much like myself, had a therapist who like just had a lot of kids and was like pregnant after pregnant after pregnant after pregnant. This woman was like, I just I didn't want to watch this. I didn't want to, she went on maternity leave like every 9 months, it seemed, which is great. Thank God, that is morally neutral. I'm so glad for her. But I love that this, again, with the self-disclosure and women not being able to not self-disclose a lot of times because of being a woman on this planet. This client didn't love that, didn't love to be, wasn't down with the vibe of constant procreation. Right. Fantastic.
And
so
I
she
lost
came to me instead.
I lost a ton of people. I mean, I think you usually do when you have babies, and that's fine. And I had people that I
Absolutely.
lost and then they came back a year later and they were like, I was just not down, and that's, so it's
Right.
like, I don't want people to judge themselves if they're like, I don't, you know what? I'm not feeling this. Like,
Yes.
I had a group blow up when I went out on maternity leave. Okay, that
Yeah.
sure. It's a weird, unpredictable.
Yeah.
You can bring up all your sibling stuff. Who knows? You could be the second kid and it brings up something you don't even know happened when you were 2. Like,
Some in utero
hey,
trauma you don't even know
yeah,
about. Sure.
you don't need to judge yourself for that. You can just be like, it's not my vibe.
This
That's
is not
cool.
what I'm into. Yeah.
And the red flag is when somebody's like, "Oh, really? What was that about for you that you couldn't
Yes.
tolerate me
This is
having a
something you
baby?
have to work
We have to
on.
talk about
We have
this.
to
Yeah, we
work
have to
on
talk
this.
about this."
That I've always run away from anyone who's like, we have to work on this.
If you say, "I think I should work on this. I think this is
Fabulous.
great. That's fine." But if it becomes this like, "Why can't you handle?" Run
We
away,
need to
run
do the
away.
work. I wanted to mention that while you, Lisa, were going through what you were going through last week, it was auspicious timing because I'm in a new training for art therapy, intuition, woo woo, witchcraft, cool shit that I love. And the trainer for that, to be a facilitator, she emphasizes over and over and over, just be a person. Don't be blank slate. It's so weird. You can't. And it's so fascinating just to be, and neither is right and neither is wrong. But after over a decade of being a therapist to now be in this, where the approach philosophy around how much of oneself to disclose in order to heal and help the healing process of the people who sign up to be a part of this process is absolutely the opposite. It's just fascinating. And it's really interesting to hear her as the trainer talk about that and the reasoning and the opportunities for healing that come when your facilitator is just a person. When the healer is, you get to see the healer as a whole person. Interesting.
Well, and I love that. And it made me remember, because I think, given thinking about the theme of this podcast about like, oh, these things are like pathology. Like
Yes.
as if grief is pathology. And it's like,
Yes.
it's not. It is a normal. And so I think that what you're learning in that takes into account the strengths that
Yeah.
come with it. Like, I don't know if you've had this, I don't think we've talked about this directly, but I have multiple therapist friends that we have talked about, like when we were in the shit, like either a breakup or like, postpartum, and you're like, oh my God, or like dealing with some crisis, and we were like secretly like barely not crying, throughout the day
Yeah.
or whatever. Our therapy work was on fire.
Yeah.
Like on fire.
Yeah.
Like, and I will say I've had some moments where it's like you go, like when you're in that open, vulnerable. So it's also like, it's this way that we pathologize, and it's like, oh, you're wounded and ineffective. And it's like, maybe,
Ineffective.
or I might have just walked through some portal that you might want to take advantage of, because like,
Right.
I might be in a space where I can see and hear, and and so I love this like whole person, and like,
Yeah.
we don't have to pathologize and be afraid and be like, oh, something is now, you're grieving, something is wrong with you, you are broken, you should be in bed. Like,
Right.
you can't talk to me. It's like, maybe, but not for everybody, not all the time. Like, So I'm
No,
always
I
like,
love-
don't sleep on a therapist in a crisis, because sometimes we do our best work.
Right. Go find a therapist whose parent just died. They're going to be great. No, I love that. I love your awareness of that. It brings me back to our first or second episode about diagnoses and bereavement disorder, which only in the United States of America, where mental illnesses are made up by white people, is bereaving somebody an actual mental illness. Yeah, I love that. And I do love, and also only in mental health treatment, which is modeled after medical treatment, do we have these like clear, distinct roles? Like you were just saying, give a healing, get a healing is something that, our psychic school says, right? Like there's no roles, these roles of like healer and healy. It's all made up. Like that's not real. That's not how it actually works. Right after my mom left her body, I feel like some of the best work I did, because I was so raw and I was so in that, talk about being in a space of existential, touching the other side. So yeah, I'm sure if you talk to some of my clients who saw me in May of 2019, they were like, whoa, Paula is on another level right now. And I was.
She's
It's
like the Beyonce of therapy.
I was like, nothing is real. We're all going to die. See you next week. I kind of was, but I mean, sometimes that's what's best. Yeah.
I love that.
I was going to ask do you want to process some of your awful VA hospital self-disclosure stories for us for a good laugh?
I was trying to think well, first of all, I do feel like we could make sort of, if we wanted to make any rule, because this was something that happened to me, is I do feel like when someone is disclosing anything sexual to you, I cannot think of a reason I would ever do that.
Yeah.
Do you agree? That feels like I have never experienced anyone doing that, disclosing and I have experienced someone disclosing sexual things to me, and I can't think of a reason that
You mean
felt,
a therapist or a provider?
a supervisor or a therapist. I feel like, that when that is happening, you might want to go, ooh, because that does feel like a red line where I'm like, I don't see.
Yeah.
I have yet in my career to ever do that, think I should do that, wonder if I should do that, or to find that helpful.
Yes.
When anyone did that to me, I was always like, ew, why do I need to know this?
Yep.
And I think that's a good thing for people to know.
No, thank you. Yeah. No, thank you.
No, thanks.
I have a story about that. A therapist that, I had a lot of struggles with this therapist. This is a white male straight therapist that I saw when I lived in New York City. And he did disclose something to me about his sexual relationship with his wife. And it was just like, and
That's what happened to me.
Burned in my brain.
Or sexual,
and it involved the
feelings
word
towards,
quickie.
Ew, no. Or sexual feelings towards you. Just never sexual or romantic feelings towards you. Hard line.
Absolutely
or really
not.
towards anyone else. And I
In
mean,
what
therapists
world?
do that. I've heard of it. It's not uncommon. It's not, hopefully it's not common. But if that is happening, we're telling you that's a flag.
Exit, stage left. Yeah, goodbye.
Yes.
See ya.
Yeah. In another podcast, they'd say that goes in the permanent record.
Yes, exactly. No, sir.
Yeah,
I said good day,
That's a
sir.
no.
Yeah,
That's a good day.
yeah.
I will say I experienced, well, I don't know how, maybe this isn't really self-disclosure, but the ineptness of the people who worked at the VA really permeated all levels, including social work and pastoral care, which I didn't know you could have bad pastoral care. You can.
I loved your story about the guy again.
Well, but that's not really, so I'll save that one for later. But
okay,
you go to a room when someone dies and you sign away their body. Just if you're wondering, you go to a room and you sign away their body. And as I was doing that, there was a delay to get the paperwork because it was the VA. So everything is delayed. And during the delay, the pastor decided that it was very important that we make small talk about all of the museums in Washington, D.C. And what was amazing about this is that as he did it, he managed to hit on memories of my father. I mean, my sister and I were not okay at that
Of course
point.
not.
I'm okay now. We were not okay at that moment.
Clearly.
And we were clearly having trouble. And he's like, so do you take in a lot of museums in DC? And I was telling him, yeah, I've been to all of them. And I like to go off the beaten path. And he's telling me about all. He's like, have you been to the Treasury? And I'm looking at my sister like, yes, our father took us there. And she's going, he did. I don't remember. And she's crying.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, yeah, but the extent of small talk I was forced to make with people while horrific things were happening in my life.
Yes.
That is poor.
That is poor care.
That is a form of self-disclosure, along with the woman who, while we were doing the paperwork, was like, I really like your hair, because that's also a form of self-disclosure. Now, thank you. I like my hair too. But also, is now the moment? Like, just here, please sign here to release your father's body. Great hair. So these are bad examples where there was no regard. Because that's the line. Is there any regard for your
experience,
my sister's needs?
Yes.
In that moment, there was
none.
Zero. They couldn't justify. So no, but I will never. Yes, my father took us to the Treasury. It was.
Sir, do you have somewhere else to be right now, Mr. Chaplin?
I will continue
anywhere else
to regale us with stories of the levels of incompetence at the VA. I do, before we end, want to say, Paula and Nameka, do you have signed, notarized medical powers of attorney and advance directives in the hands physically of the person who would carry out your wishes were you to be incapacitated.
No, but I'd have a lawyer here in Palm Springs who that's what he does for a living. And he keeps telling me that Carlo and I have to do that. Yeah.
Carlo and you need to do that.
I
I'm going
know.
to just keep asking. I'm asking all of our listeners. Let me tell you,
Yeah.
you don't want anybody because everybody thinks it's, oh, machines or no machines. It is
It's so much
nuanced.
more. Yes.
It is complicated.
Yeah.
You don't want anyone out in the hall going, did we do the right thing?
Did we sign the thing? Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they need I cannot emphasize this enough, a hard copy. You will think it's on file at the hospital, at the VA, or wherever. Some
No.
hospitals may be competent enough,
Doubt
but
it.
they need a physical copy.
Yeah.
So I'm
If
just
you
gonna
were
keep
born in the
asking that.
70s, it's time to get
It's time.
And
If
to-
you were born ever,
Yeah.
it's time to get one. And if there is an emotional barrier, because there can be, who do I pick? I don't want to think about my death.
Sure.
If you have a therapist or anybody, maybe talk to them about those barriers.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you, you don't want to not have that.
And if you have children, if you have offspring, you are doing them a disservice if you don't have all of that in place. Exhibit A, Lisa, her sister, last week.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. So that's
Yeah.
my public service announcement, which I will become very annoying about.
No, I think it's very smart. And my friend here is like, you and Carlo need to just do it. And it's true. My parents were really good about it. Also, if you can, there's so many things about my mother's death that I am so grateful for. And one of them was that she refused to die in a hospital. She refused.
Go home.
Go home.
If you
get
can,
home
go
care.
home. The
Yes.
drugs are
They're at home.
And
And when your daughter is in charge of the drugs, she just a little bit more than maybe they have
want you want someone to
and
be
love.
in charge
Yes.
of the drugs. Someone who likes you.
Yes.
Someone who likes you to be in charge of the drugs
Of the
at your
morphine.
house. Because in a
Yes.
hospital, they can't do that. So
No.
you should write that in there, that unless it is otherwise not possible. Because
Yeah.
we were like, oh, sentimentally, my dad doesn't need to be at home. He just lives in
Right.
the party. It's not like, what would he care? And then by the end, we're like, oh, Jesus.
And the nurses, the hospice workers, the hospice nurses that come to homes are angels straight from heaven. And it's a different vibe.
Unless they're at the VA, in which case no one is an angel.
Well,
Trust no one.
that's probably true. That's probably true.
Oh,
So-
Lord.
We want to end by saying, if you are in a relationship with a therapist, if you've been in a relationship with theirs, if you have a therapist, to be thinking about how it feels when and if that therapist discloses things about themselves. And you get to decide. You are the driver of that bus. If it doesn't feel good, great. If you want to know more about a therapist, you can ask them questions. If you want to know
It's
how
a
old are your kids.
process.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a relationship. You can ask them questions. If you've always wanted to know, where your therapist grew up or whatever. Yeah, of course you can ask. I think I told you the story. I have a client who for years was like, I know I'm not allowed to, I think I said this on here already. I know I'm not allowed to follow you on Instagram, but all my friends do. And then they send me what you post. And I'm like, well, that seems silly.
And they are allowed to. It is
So you are allowed.
You're not allowed to follow you.
I'm
And
not
we
allowed
have-
to Facebook stalk my clients. You're allowed to Facebook stalk me if you
We're not
want.
allowed to solicit you. Paula
Right.
can't say, please follow my Instagram.
Nope.
But you can, and if you ask, and we might want to have a talk with you about what that might be like and what you might learn and how that might affect things. We can
Absolutely.
talk about that.
Right.
But that is we cannot disclose
Discretion.
things about you. We cannot
Right.
follow you, but you can ask me anything. And if I'm not comfortable disclosing it, because I think you're trying to get my password to steal my 401k, I will be like, I don't want to talk about that.
Not going to give you my social security number, but if you want to know other things, absolutely you can. Yeah. All right. Awesome. Everyone, thank you so much for listening. Please like us on YouTube's. Please send us your reviews. Please, if you have a question you've always wanted to ask a therapist, or you're so confused about this one thing that your therapist always does, let us know. Tell us, give us feedback on Instagrams. I am Paula D. Atkinson on Instagram.
I am at the Lisa Kays.
So we would love to hear from you about what about therapy is deeply confusing. We'd love to clear it up. Okay. Everyone take care, and we'll see you next time. And don't forget that probably nothing's wrong with you. Bye.
Nope. Bye.